Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Wadier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Wadier, and I'm here as always with my good friend and colleague Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey Scott, how are you?
Fantastic, my friend. Excited for today's conversation where we are going to do a dive into our inbox, social media messages, comments on the podcast, where we have questions that have been submitted from you, the listener, and we pick out the ones that we think are the biggest bang for the buck in terms of the ones that will answer a lot of the questions that we receive or common misconceptions or struggle points. So we're hoping that today's conversation will lead to some discernible action steps for you, because that is our hope and goal for each and every one of our podcast episodes.
Heck yeah.
So if you are new to the podcast, welcome in. Thanks for giving us a shot. If you want to know more about our journey with fasting, how transformational it's been, and ultimately why we do what we do here at Fasting for Life week in and week out, bringing you a podcast episode, resources on the website, 7-day Master Your Fasting challenges, coaching, support, etc., head back and give episode 0 and episode 1 a listen. It'll give you some insights into who we are, how fasting has helped us so much, and ultimately the millions of downloads and listeners that we've had since then. If you are one of those long-term listeners, you're a Fasting for Life OG. Yes. We're also grateful for your likes and 5-star reviews and shares and downloads. And just keep up the good work, because we are on this journey with you. It is not a sprint. It is a marathon. And we always want to begin with the end in mind, that we are creating sustainable lifestyle changes in using fasting as the vehicle to get us there. So, Tommy, let's dive into today's topic. We've got 5 questions that we're going to go over. The first one was submitted, and we thought it was great, from one of our VIP coaching clients. And Catherine submitted this question. It starts out more of as a statement, but it says, cheat. It wasn't in my plan. I was well prepared for a flame day, but got annoyed at work and chose to have a meal that included pasta as well as protein and veggies. Not horrible, but feeling like I failed and betrayed the plan. How do I reframe this thinking, please?
Wow. So reframing the thinking is a really good way of looking at something where you feel like, man, okay, this is something that I've done in the past, something that there's a good chance that something like this will happen again. Maybe asking yourself, should you be rethinking the process? I mean, because we don't want to live in a guilt shame cycle that's not motivating, that's not allowing us to enjoy the process. But hey, a little bit of acknowledgement of, man, okay, I wish I hadn't have done that, does go a long way, because we don't want it to be to where our standards are lower for ourselves, right? So I like the way you're kind of thinking about this. I don't think we need a complete reframing, but I do want to go back to that very first word that Catherine put, which was cheat. It wasn't in my plan. Okay. So, and the reason why I'm coming back there is because it's so fasting and your health journey, it's not a game with very strict black and white rules. So there's not really any cheating. So if we think about it like that, then my next statement will be, you chose to do what you did. So you didn't cheat in a board game. You made a choice in the moment. Okay, so rather than cheat, say that you chose, because then you're putting the onus on yourself. You were the one that did the thing. You made the decision to do the thing, even if it was an emotional one in the moment and not necessarily one that you felt like you had a lot of control over in that moment. You still chose, right? And it will still be your choice again the next time. So coming to it from that's the part that I would reframe. So that doesn't take the pressure or the responsibility off. It actually puts more on, I think. And I think in an empowering way, because there will be more choices. Every day that you're fasting or not fasting is a choice. Every food choice is a choice. So you are choosing. So going at it from that perspective, I think is good. And then the other thing that I would address here is what happened before you made the choice? Because there was a series of events here, starting from work. You got annoyed at work. Okay, so then there was an emotional response. We've talked about halt the BS, hungry or happy, angry, lonely, tired, bored, stressed. This is a lot of times where we make these emotional food choices, a lot of times because we're in a dopamine deficit during that moment, and we're looking for some more for a quick dopamine hit.
Not even the emotional food choice, Tommy, too, though. Sorry to interrupt you, but also the decision to not follow your fasting plan too.
Oh, yeah, good point. So the decision to kind of freelance in the moment. Oh, forget about my fasting plan. That's less important now. What's the most important, urgent fire that I need to put out is this dopamine deficit, is this frustration that I'm living with, and I want to get past that, and I know food's going to help me get past that. That's the subconscious, like, logical progression that kind of happens in that moment, or can happen. So addressing what happened in that moment, can you do things to prevent or insulate or maybe better confront what happened that took you down this annoyance emotional path? That would be really, really helpful. Sometimes possible, sometimes not, but it is good to evaluate if you could do something better, because it will happen again. And then the food choices after that, where you go, did the food actually make you feel better? Did it help you get past that? Or did it actually become regretful or more frustrating, or that didn't really help me? I would have rather just live with the annoyance rather than feeling worse going into dinner time and then into bedtime. I slept like crap that night, woke up the next morning, and it was harder to set my fasting timer. What the hell did I do? I set off a cascade of events here. I would have much rather just dealt with the annoyance, had a moment of woosah, and like did some meditation for 5 minutes, or gone back to the coworker, told them they were a jerk, right? And then dealt with that. There were choices to be made, is my point. I'm being a little cheeky with it, but at the same time, I would rather deal with 5 minutes of frustration than 12 or 18 hours of like, dang it, of like regret, from that moment.
So 3 things. First and foremost, this has never happened to any of us. This is only Catherine. We've never done this before, right? So we've all been here, and we're all going to be here again, right? The
exactly.
Hulk BS, the hungry, happy, angry, lonely, tired, bored, or stressed. The second thing is the reality that we don't want to use fasting in a way to prepare for going off the rails, and air quotes, cheating. I don't even like that term. That's why I love when you said choosing over cheating. And we don't want to use it for reparations of something that we just did.
Right.
As lashings.
Yeah.
Because that's diet mentality. That's on-off mentality. That's good, bad, foodless mentality, right?
Punishment mentality too. Yeah.
And the reality is, physiologically speaking, so the third thing is that this emotional relationship to food is what we talk about in food choices and food decisions, is about 70 to 80% of what we talk about inside of coaching and our challenges. Because fasting in concept is simple. It's just not easy to apply in certain situations, just like this. And the physiology is 50% of your dopamine is in your gut. And 80% of your serotonin, your happy hormones. So it's not uncommon that this is where we go, especially in the food noise-filled, obesogenic, refined, processed, convenient food world that we live in.
Yeah.
Hell, Taco Bell has an entire marketing effort around fourth meal, right? Like, ooh, get a little taco. Yeah. Of course. That sounds great.
Right.
I don't feel great after I ate it, especially when you run into the restroom.
Yeah.
However,
what about the next day? Forget your next fast the next day. Oh,
that feeling that you're talking about is so key. And when it comes to habit change or habit implementation or lifestyle change, we get stuck in trying to change the action based on the feeling. So when you look at atomic habits or tiny habits or habit transformation, which ultimately creates discipline rather than relying on willpower in the moment, the feeling, that emotional feeling of frustration, is we always want to change the action that we do that then gives us the reward. and you alluded to this earlier, Tommy, is that, well, we need to actually identify the cue.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, Catherine's done that. The cue was frustration at work.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the different action that we're going to put into that place that then still going to give us that reward that we want? And there's a little bit more work to be done on the cue.
Mm-hmm.
The trigger, so to speak, is why did it make you feel that way? Now, having 3 kids under 8, I call them my loving little terrorists, right? Because I love them to death, do anything for them.
Mm-hmm.
But there are times where I'm like, why is this bothering me? You're the one doing the dumb thing. I've already told you 5 times not to do the dumb thing. But yet it's bothering me. It's causing a shift in me. And we used to, part of this men's coaching that I was a part of, we call it the shift. So before you shift into a slide, into a thing you don't want to do, what's the why behind that cue? And there's a little bit of emotional work to be done there. This isn't a therapy session, right? But why did it do that? So we love to implement something called if-then planning. So, one of our coaching members eloquently stated it this way. I think it was Carrie, who said, when-then planning.
When then, yeah. It's not if it's going to happen. It's when.
We got if-then from Mel Robbins, right? That's where I was first exposed to it. If this happens, then I'm going to do this. So it's when-then planning. When this happens again, when my kids, are doing things that we have told them 5 times not to do, before I start to shift and then slide, right, into an action that I don't want to get the reward that I ultimately want, we need to focus on the cue. And then when. So when this happens again, what are you going to do in place? This is called habit replacement. Because if you take out an action and there's a gap here now, so you need to fill that gap with a when-then planning. So then I'm going to do this instead. I'm going to go on Amazon and buy myself the thing that's been in my shopping cart. Maybe you can do that and afford to do retail therapy. Maybe it's you're going to go for a walk or go to, get your favorite fasting-friendly drink. Or maybe you're going to go phone a friend or meditate or put on some music. But there needs to be something to fill that gap. And we're not shooting for perfection here because this isn't a failure, right? This is a learning moment. It's a present time awareness of, hey, this just happened. I chose to negotiate down with myself away from my plan. And what did that feeling generate? Well, crap, it didn't really do the thing that I wanted it to do anyway, because then 2 hours later, I felt worse about the situation. Right? So if we negotiate up and we put in a new action, then we're going to get what we call bonus dopamine. Because now you've stuck to the plan and you've made a second decision that puts you and your plan first, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the short term and the long term.
Yeah.
So you got it from both. And
it's not free dopamine, but it's bonus.
Right, it's bonus. And I love the fact here that, Catherine, ask yourself this too. A few months back, or maybe a year or 2 years back, if you were in the same situation, might you have done something a little bit worse in this situation to get some of that dopamine back? Like, might you have gone off the rails in a way that didn't include protein or veggies, or more of a you're in control of the ingredients kind of way to get an even faster or more dramatic dopamine hit? So if that was the case, then you're already doing better than a previous version of yourself before doing, consistent work, and maybe with consistent fasting and better food choices and all of these things, just to give a little bit of perspective for where did you come from, and what might you have done in the past. And that's good perspective too, because then you can realize, you know what, I have come a long way. And yeah, maybe there's some work to do. Like, not everything's perfect. Great. I got some places where I can do a little bit of work, and there's room for improvement. And that's awesome. We always want to be striving for that next place where we can find some room for improvement. But good to have perspective on what you've done well or better than you would have in the past as well. So keep up the good work, Catherine.
And I feel like she's already done that, because she's like, yeah, I had some pasta, but I also had protein and veggies.
Exactly.
A cheat meal in the dieting weight loss Fitspo world is, I'm going to get the double Oreo cookie shake with the Big Mac and the. So yeah, you already made an incredible decision here to, you know what, I'm going to have some pasta, but I'm going to have some protein and veggies too. Great. That's incredible. So let's celebrate on that.
That was a choice too.
Yeah, it was a choice. You had a choice
Yeah.
to go off the rails and you didn't.
Yep.
So we're proud of
Hmm.
you. So keep it
Yep.
up. And hopefully this resonates with so many of us that have never had this happen before. Right, Tommy?
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. First
Yeah.
time.
Never
Yeah.
happened.
Thanks for blazing the trail for us, Catherine.
I actually said this to my wife the other night. Traveled this past weekend for a seminar, had a speaking engagement, hadn't been in front of a big room of
Nice.
people in a while.
Hmm.
Stress was high, and I got done with it. It went well, and then I was like, "Ooh!" My old me would have been like, "Let's go celebrate the happy, right?
Yeah.
Let's go
Yeah.
get a let's go get a meal,
Yeah.
especially on when I'm traveling, right?
I'm
Ooh,
flying
yeah,
high. Let's keep this.
eat
Let's
off
keep this
script,
going. Yeah.
right?" And I came home, not as much sleep as I wanted over the weekend. Busy day with the kids on Sunday, and then Monday hit. Monday was crazy, which led into a busy Tuesday. And on Tuesday night, I was like, "Hey, I don't feel like cooking tonight." And that was me reaching out to my wife, being like, "So are we going to order food?"
Right.
Right? Even though I was still going to make a better decision with food. Like if we order barbecue, I just get meat, right?
Hmm.
And if we get Thai, then Vietnamese, then I get this spicy lemongrass beef dish, right?
Hmm.
So it's not pasta laden,
Yeah.
or
Or just like
pizza,
a giant
or
bowl of rice.
yeah, the Pizookie from Pizza Hut, right?
Oh
The
man.
pizza
Yeah.
box with the breadstick, right? So it's a better choice. But I was still looking for that little bit of like, I kind of want to slither out of this. She's like, no, I'm gonna go home and cook. I was like, all right, fine. Did I enjoy dinner? Yes. Did I sleep great? Yes. Was it the right decision? Yes. Next time, not so sure. But at this
Right.
point, I'm getting a lot more of those wins, right? That we're speaking about here.
So that's
than-
when then it happened,
Yeah.
right? It's going to happen again. You're
Yeah.
going to be in one of those spots again.
Yep. Yep. So
That's a great
anyway,
example.
all right, great question, Catherine. Keep up the amazing work. Proud of you. We had a question come in from John. I'm doing keto as well as fasting. Yep, been there. Been going through your podcast, and I haven't found it yet. Is it better to eat a bigger lunch than dinner? I'm doing 18-6, so 18-hour fast, 6-hour eating nutrition opportunity. I'm also hoping to do a challenge in the next month or two. Only been
Nice.
fasting for a few weeks.
Wow. Great job,
So, John,
John. I love it.
shout out, man. Thanks for
Yeah.
being on the journey with us. Thanks for submitting a question. And the question is, we have changed our tune on this. So if you went back and started from the beginning, then you have definitely not gotten there yet. But in our opinion, yes, it is better to eat a bigger lunch or an earlier meal than a bigger later meal because of the circadian biology and the insulin sensitivity difference that we see at 8 a.m. versus 8 p.m. with the same meal. So our insulin sensitivity goes down as the day goes on. And it's not necessarily about the calorie or when you eat it, but it's the effect that it has then on your rest and digest and your sleep.
Yeah.
So 100% we have changed our tune that eating earlier in the day, stacking most of your intake in earlier in the day is better than just the skipping breakfast, doing the 12 to 8 nighttime kind of eating window, or in your case, it would be 2 to 8, right? If you're doing the skipping breakfast fasting club type mentality,
Yeah.
which is fine. And the reality is nothing's forever. So if you're losing weight and the scale's moving and you're feeling good and your sleep's good and you're seeing changes in your body composition and clothes are fitting better, then you don't necessarily have to make this change right now, but it is a lever that you can pull with fasting in the future.
Yeah, you could see some cool additional benefits if you thought about it like just a simple division of it. For a lot of us by default, dinner here like out in the West or in America, a lot of times dinner would be the largest meal that we have during the day. So if we flip that on its head and our largest meal was earlier in the day, we'll get a better physiological response to it. To your point, Scott, you don't necessarily have to make that choice in order to have a good and healthy and sustainable lifestyle. But if you do have the choice and you do kind of want to optimize these things, even if you were going to have 2 meal opportunities, so in that 6-hour nutrition opportunity, if it was like 2 main meals in there, then if you split them up 50-50, that would already be better than having the larger meal at the dinner time versus the earlier like lunchtime meal, if you will. And then if you wanted to go a step further, maybe do 2/3 of your food coming in at the earlier time and 1/3 coming in later. That would be
So a larger meal than a smaller meal.
yeah, 60-40, 70-30, something like that would be a great way. I wouldn't personally spend too much time like splitting hairs and trying to like split up the macros and split up the calories and things like that. But you could definitely see a lot of success like that. The same way with the carbohydrates too. If you were going to take in X number of carbohydrates, if you took in more of those earlier in the day, you'll have a better more proportional physiological response to them versus when they come in later on in the evening before you're transitioning into that sleep cycle, your body just doesn't have enough time. You don't have enough time to do enough things and for the blood sugar to slowly decrease and for the insulin response to slowly come down because you have a more dramatic response to blood sugar and insulin that happens later on in the day. It's just part of that circadian rhythm. So you're not really going to be able to change that. So more carbohydrates earlier in the day versus later in the day is also going to help protect your sleep, make the next fast a little bit easier, make your cravings lower, all of these kind of things. Your body just understands what to do with these things better earlier in the day.
Yep, absolutely. Love the question, John. Love that you're starting your journey. Happy to have you on the journey with us.
Yeah.
And excited to hear about your wins and victories along the way.
So many more to come.
Oh,
right
yeah.
around the
Excited
corner.
for
It's
you.
going to be awesome.
All right. So now we have another question that came in from Susan. She gives a shout out. Thank you for this amazing podcast and life-changing results for me.
That's amazing.
I'm down 65 pounds with 55 more to go.
Wow. Congratulations over
Hallelujah.
halfway. Yeah.
Love it.
So cool.
I started wearing a CGM and I'm trying to make good use of it. Okay.
Nice.
When you say it's better to eat early because of your insulin sensitivity, which we just talked about with John, what does that mean? Do you want your insulin to kick in faster so your blood sugar stays low? Question mark. My son is type 1, so I'm familiar with insulin, but I'm trying to figure out how will I know about my insulin sensitivity. I think I need some basic understanding, and I just can't seem to find anything to educate me. Thank you so much for your continued inspiration. I can't wait to get through the second half of my journey.
Wow.
So, Susan, I'm going to encourage you that you're going to get through your second half of your journey, but the journey's not over. The fun just begins. So I want to future pace when you get there, not if you get there, but when you get there, you're going to be a different person. It's going to be really cool to see. So thank you for the kind words. So proud of you for what you've been up to. But Tommy, let's talk about this CGM and understanding of insulin sensitivity. Like, what does that truly mean, and how does she know she's making progress?
Well, so as Susan is alluding to, you can't measure insulin directly at home, and that's okay. But as an understanding that your insulin response is generally speaking very, very highly and directly proportionally related to the blood sugar response that happens as a result of the intake of mostly carbohydrates, but also to a lesser extent fat and protein. And the meal timing has a lot to do with your response to these macronutrients coming into the body. So as we just talked about, through John's question, which was a matter of meal timing and proportional responses, it's not necessarily that you want the insulin to kick in faster, but it's really, think about it more like as you get later on into the day, the insulin response becomes an over-exaggerated response. Sometimes it's not as effective, so it becomes an exaggerated response. And what I mean by that is for the same calories and the same macronutrients, the same number of carbohydrates, the same type of carbohydrates coming in earlier in the day, you'll see a more steady rise in blood sugar and a more steady decline in blood sugar. Whereas when you go later on into the day, you can see more dramatic spikes that lead to a higher peak. And sometimes they can come down faster, but sometimes depending on the time of day, sometimes they won't actually end up coming down as thoroughly, like back to the baseline for where they were. So if you had a lunch, let's say, for example, you might see that your blood sugar rose 30 points and that that happened over about an hour or so, and then maybe it took another 2 hours to come back down to baseline. If you had the same meal at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, you might have seen a 60-point rise in your blood sugar, and maybe it only came down 40 points out of that 60 points. So then you may end up going to bed with a higher blood sugar reading than you would have like coming into that lunchtime meal or going into that dinner meal. And that's going to be problematic because a lot of times you might wake up and you still didn't see that number come down. So you might wake up with elevated blood sugar versus the day before. And so that's problematic because that one meal led to an exaggerated insulin response. It's trying to control things, but it didn't actually work. And then you you went to bed with let's say a 20% elevation in your blood sugar. And when that happens day after day and week after week, month after month, you're leading to long-term issues that, just one little decision at a time is leading to these like stacking up of long-term issues too. Does that make sense, Scott?
It does. So I think we tackled the insulin sensitivity piece pretty well. So later in the day, your insulin's effectiveness will be less.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the macronutrients. Carbohydrates stimulate it the most, then alcohol, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then protein and fat stimulates it the least.
Mm-hmm.
So if we want to conceptualize this like visually to know if you're improving your insulin's effectiveness, decreasing your insulin resistance, and ultimately increasing your effectiveness, which is the sensitivity side of the equation,
Mm-hmm.
it's all going to come down to what you were alluding to, which was that area under the curve. So stable blood sugar with less peaks and valleys, so less big blood sugar swings. So we want to see 30 to 40 point variation from pre-meal to post-meal. So if you're at 100 pre-meal and it goes up to 140 post-meal, that's on the high range. But we want to see that come back down to what Tommy was talking about within about a 2-hour range. The quicker that returns to that within that normal, within that 10 points or around that same number that it started, that's showing insulin sensitivity or insulin effectiveness.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to see it stay within 30 to 40 points, ideally 30, high range 40, in terms of pre-meal versus post-meal. And then we want to see your average blood sugar stay in that green range, optimally, right, in the morning, less than 86. And then throughout the day, in between that up and down 30 to 40 point range from where your baseline is. So if you're looking at trends over the weeks to months of using that CGM, you should see that those big spikes, those ups and downs become less, and that your time under the curve becomes more stable, if that makes sense, Tommy.
Yeah, it really does. And when you think about food choices, yes, they matter. And this is why we talked about, optimal being, think about it as your body's just less prepared for food. It doesn't handle the same macronutrients as well later on in the day. It's just not as efficient. There's not as much time for you to actually, burn through some of this energy that's coming in, and which helps to actually balance and regulate the hormonal response. Because then you're not just reliant on insulin to do the job of bringing down blood sugar, but your actual physical activity is helping to bring down that blood sugar faster too. Because just a simple thing like walking post meal will help dramatically with bringing that blood sugar down. That's why if you happen to be in a situation and your larger meal is at dinner time or even later, it just, for whatever reason, I ate late, then if you can make it a point to go on a walk after that, it's going to help. It's going to do better for your sleep in a measurable way. And so the cool thing about the CGM is that you're going to actually see that measurable way that I'm talking about. So you can do little, split testing experiments when you try the same meal a little earlier in the day versus a little later in the day. Try a post-meal walk versus a not having a post-meal walk. See how that looks. The spikes and the curves, they're going to be different. You're going to start learning things and getting some feedback from the CGM based on your body's response to some of these foods and activity choices, because everything you do throughout the day is a choice, and all of these small choices matter, and you're going to see how that affects. Because extrapolate what your CGM is doing, it's also determining what your A1C is doing. Your 90-day blood sugar, rolling average is determined by what happened minute to minute on that CGM. So then you can start subconsciously connecting those dots between your small choices and what's happening like on your blood work, your yearly blood work, let's say. And that's a really powerful thing.
And CGMs are so great because you get to see in real time your decisions about your food choices, your sleep, your stress, your exercise, the things that you're doing to be well and healthy, those decisions you're making, you can see in real time what your blood sugar is doing. And that's a lag measure to what insulin's effectiveness is ultimately doing. So that's why it's cool. Like a stressful meeting, you can actually see a blood sugar increase, right? Just due to stress. A poor night of sleep, you'll see elevated blood sugar in the morning, like Tommy mentioned. So you're on the right track, and just watch the trends and see what's happening in real time pre and post meal. And by the way, again, keep up the great work. 65 pounds down, 55 more to go. Excited for you. Thanks for sending the question in. We've got 2 questions left. We've got Amelia
Hmm.
And I love it, Amelia. She says, "Hi, I've been trying to find the answer from AI. I
Oh.
need more, claims I need more calories than I initially thought.
Okay.
How many calories should I consume on OMAD?
Mm.
I'm 37-year-old female, 94 kilograms, and 167 centimeters. Tommy, can we convert those? Because I'm terrible at conversion.
Sure, absolutely.
And I'm confused about AI telling me I need more than 2,000 calories because I've also heard OMAD is not about counting calories. Please help."
So about 207 pounds.
Okay.
And then let's see, we got about 5.5 feet.
Okay.
About 5'5", 5'6", yeah.
So that gives us some context
Hmm.
into, are you in a maintenance phase or are you in a fat loss phase?
Okay.
So if you've come to fasting and you're looking at calories, my guess here is that you're going to be in a fat loss phase. You're going to want to lose weight.
And OMAD too.
And OMAD, of course.
Hmm.
So when we look at this, yes, fasting is freeing. It gives you the ability to not have to track and count calories and worry about macros. There may be times where you need to do that if you hit the dreaded plateau, or OMAD becomes a weight gain strategy, or a unintentional plateau strategy, or a frustration strategy, right? OMAD has many faces of OMAD, one meal a day. But when we're looking at this, it's not so much about the calorie, it's about the consistency over week over day over day, week over week, with making good nutrition choices during your window, prioritizing protein, and eating to satiety. So when you start fasting, you're going to stop burning glucose and glycogen, which is the short-term energy stores, and you're going to start producing ketones. Well, ketones give your body a tremendous amount of energy. So your intake is naturally going to go down based on your hunger cues. Now, if you've got severe insulin resistance, leptin resistance, yeah, you may still have some hunger cues that are lying to you, right? Because we know a lot of hunger comes from the cephalic phase, which is the five senses. You smell food, you see food, or a certain time of day, your body's expecting food. Well, we know with consistent fasting, those hunger hormones go down. So when you're in a fat loss phase and you're using fasting, which is metabolic protective, metabolism protective, and growth hormone protective, which protects your lean muscle tissue, so you can tap into fat and produce more ketones and burn more fat. It's not so much about the calorie at this point. When you're on maintenance and you're eating for sustenance and nutrition and long-term sustainability, yeah, we need to consume. We need energy. We need fuel. The problem is when you use these equations and you've either recently gained weight, been stalled, or losing weight, the equations are not as accurate, up to 60% wrong.
Tricky.
So go grab the Blueprint to Fasting for Fat Loss. It's in the show notes. We give you some general macro breakdowns of prioritizing protein, backfilling with fiber, veggies, and then small amount of carbs. So we're not anti-carb. Unless you're a severe type 2 diabetic and you're on a bunch of insulin, then yeah, we need to go low carb for a while. And eat to satiety. So if you're getting about 40 to 60% of your nutritional needs, your caloric needs on a day-to-day basis, and your hunger cues are in check, and the scale's moving, and you're feeling good, less inflamed, sleeping better, clothes are fitting better, you're absolutely fine. And that's the ungoogleableness, the un-AI-ness of this situation, is taking into account those other things.
Great point. Because when if you look at this as long-term sustainability, hitting that 40 to 60% means that you're kind of getting in the habit of calibrating a good meal for yourself. And like, think about long-term sustainable maintenance. You might have a couple of nutrition opportunities, a couple of meals every day. That's a great habit to be building during a fat loss phase too. And it also provides what Amelia is looking for here, which is a built-in caloric deficit too. But it's also doing it in a way that integrates with your fasting lifestyle. So then we get to maintain control over blood glucose and our insulin response as well. So, I mean, you talk about hitting it from all angles here. And when you're doing it in a very highly protein prioritized way, your body's set for burning through some of those long-term fat stores. And now, like, would you want to try to be burning fat necessarily every single day of every week, for month over month over month, even if you have big weight loss goals? No, like, your body is very adaptable. It's very smart, and it loves to to find ways to increase survivalhood, and it's a very adaptable machine. So
Mm-hmm.
mix things up a little bit. Don't just get stuck in the same
Yep.
old OMAD rut, because that's not great either. So take some of these things, put them into place, today, and keep doing what's working for sure.
Yeah.
And then when you feel a little bit stuck, think about maybe it's time to move one of these levers again, right?
Yep.
Take a look at recent food choices and meal timing too. Even just doing something like what the last couple of questions were about from Susan, from John, like as far as meal timing, that can be a big lever too, especially
Yep.
for your OMAD.
Yep. I love it.
Yeah.
So hopefully, Amelia, that answers your question. Let us know. We're going to let you know that we recorded this and answered your question as well. All right, last question came in from Jennifer. She says, hello. If I drink 32 ounces of bone broth the first 2 days of a 3-day fast, is that still considered fasting?
Ooh, okay.
Also, does Diet Pop, i.e. Sprite Zero, cause insulin disturbances? Thank you. Great questions. Great questions. So let's take the conversation of bone broth fasting. Now, my bone broth fasting experience and knowledge comes from a Dr. David Jockers, a good friend and colleague.
Mm-hmm.
He has, and we'll put the link in the show notes, he has an overview of the top 5 benefits of how to do bone broth fasting. But I want to talk about the line in the sand between this conversation around clean fasting and dirty fasting.
Okay.
And that line depends on your individual decision-making and your goals for what you're trying to do with fasting. If you are trying to manage severe MS or seizures, and you need to get into a highly therapeutic ketotic state, then you're going to want to adapt a very strict fasting lifestyle to help your body heal. If you are trying to lose weight and get healthy and see the changes in your labs and create a sustainable lifestyle change, then you've got some wiggle room here when it comes to clean versus dirty fasting. And I like to use this example of dry fasting, which is not something that we recommend or practice, but there are people that are out there that do it and show physiological benefits. So dry fasting is not consuming any water. So we would move the line to, well, true fasting is now dry fasting, not fasting with water and coffee and unsweetened tea and those types of things that have no caloric intake, right?
Yeah.
But let's take it one step farther. In dry fasting, there's 2 categories, hard and soft.
Okay.
Soft dry fasting is you can still shower and brush your teeth and go in a pool.
Okay.
Hard dry fasting is you don't touch water at all.
All right.
Okay, so is that real fasting? Does that break a fast? So my point here is being a little cheeky with it, of course, but where's the line? So our line is sustainability, and is it causing you a disturbance in your physiology, to your second question, and or making you more hungry, increasing your hunger cues, or making you much more likely to break your fast early or not stay consistent?
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. I really like that. So even just compartmentalizing this last fast, okay, the first 2 days of a 3-day fast.
Yep.
So if you felt that it would be beneficial to have some bone broth, great, consider it a bone broth fast, or maybe it was like a transitional bone broth fast into a clean fast. And if that helped you go from those first couple of days, you really wanted to do a 72-hour fast, but man, those first couple of days, maybe it was a big reversal from what you did last week. And then you really needed that, or you wanted some additional nourishment, or whatever the case may be that caused you to do that. Maybe you're trying to do some gut healing, and you wanted some nourishing bone broth, or maybe it was your way of getting in some good electrolytes, which we can do in multiple ways, supplementing salt and using other tools. But I bet at the end of that fast, you felt a heck of a lot better. So then what you can ask yourself is, going back, would I have rather just not done that 72-hour fast or dirty fast or bone broth fast? Would I have rather not done that, or would I rather have done what I did? And so I think the obvious answer is going to be, yeah, I got a lot of benefit out of it, and I would do that again. if that's the case, then that's a great tool. And I love that. I love having that in your fasting tool belt right there. Even
Yep.
if you weren't in a moment where you thought, I need this bone broth, but maybe it was
Right.
just part of the plan. I'm going to use this bone broth. And so
Yep.
that's really cool. Does it cause a blood sugar, change? Sure, maybe. If you were wearing a CGM, you could see that for yourself. Did it make it?
I would lean towards probably not, but
Okay.
maybe.
And if it did, probably a very small one. So
Yeah.
did it lead to an insulin response? Maybe a tiny one. Again, you can't measure it at home, but did you get a lot of benefits from that? I bet you did. I bet you saw some progress on the scale. I bet you felt better at hour 48 and hour 72, and I bet
Yep.
you'd want to do it again. So it's awesome. So way to develop that tool. And as far as going into like a diet soda, a diet
Hold that
Sprite
thought.
Zero. Okay,
Hold
go
that
ahead.
thought. I want to unpack the bone broth for just a minute.
Okay.
In that, this is no different than a shot of apple cider vinegar or a pickle spear or some flavored element to get some additional salt in when you're having one of those moments of fasting fatigue or dizziness, or your stomach's a little off, or you're tired as you start to extend your fast. It's a tool that you have that allows you to continue to reach the goal, which is that longer fast, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So just rat-a-tat-tat, the top 5 benefits of bone broth fasting. Again, this is from Dr. Jockers. Heals the gut and reduces food sensitivities, repairs and strengthens joints, tendons, and ligaments, improves the skin, hair, reduces visible signs of aging, supports a healthy metabolism and can help with weight loss, and supports detoxification and improves immune function.
Love it.
Decreasing chronic inflammation, helping heal the gut. All of those sound wonderful to me.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't fix what's not broken. If this is working for you and it's allowing you to stay consistent, I say absolutely stay the course. And you may not use it forever, but for right now, it's a viable tool for you. So
love that.
let's talk about the Sprite Zero Diet Pop artificial sweetener conversation, Tommy, and then we'll wrap up.
Sure. So my biggest thing is I consumed probably, I never counted the number of Diet Dr. Peppers specifically, but
I knew I didn't like you.
Yeah.
Dr. Pepper.
Especially like I went to school in Dallas.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Strike two.
that's where they were.
I'm just kidding.
That's
My
where,
wife's
that's
from
where they
Dallas.
were made, right? Yeah. And I never counted them, obviously, but to be in the low thousands would probably be the accurate number, I would think. So anyway, many hundreds at least, and so what I realized at a certain point was that they were absolutely leading me to crave more things that were sweet.
Yes.
I would be intaking them with highly hedonic foods, with things that were saltier and more processed, but then they like were priming me to look forward to something sweet, or not necessarily sweeter, but something sweet afterwards. I would just remember the sweetness of the drink, and then I would want to be chasing that with something later, and it was usually food that was sweeter. And so that cycle for me was the biggest reason why I'm just like, I don't typically have anything besides an element. There's like nothing that's bringing in an artificial sweetness on a consistent basis into my diet. So that's a personal thing.
Yep.
And was it leading to a blood sugar disturbance? Probably not, maybe not, but I was certainly doing things along with it that certainly were creating more blood sugar and insulin disturbances, that's for sure.
I had a similar experience with Zevia, which is sweetened with stevia, right? And there's studies that show that stevia, whether or not it's liquid, powdered, or if it's combined with maltodextrin in some of the research studies, can actually show to have an effect on blood sugar and insulin response. But it's kind of like this paper cut in a house fire, right? So if you're drinking 10 of them a day, into what Tommy just outlined in terms of the craveability or the increased hunger cues or the more desire for more things that are sweeter or that fill that dopamine food relationship void. Then I think it's probably time to cut back or remove them for a while. I do this with coffee periodically. I'll just go on a 7 to 14 day coffee fast, and I'll just cut out coffee. And the first couple of days suck. And then after that, I'm like, oh yeah, now I'm feeling a lot better. And then when I go back to coffee, I'm like, oh yeah, 1 cup of coffee now instead of 4.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
because your body builds up a sensitivity to it. So inherently, there's nothing bad with it. If you want to stay away from the artificial sweeteners and things like that, then I would recommend looking for a swap like a Zevia or something like that. But it's just that personal decision. What are you using it for? How much are you consuming? And ultimately, is this going to be part of your long-term plan? Then if it is, then sure. If it's working for you, stay the course. So
one more thing I wanted to add, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
It would just be the fact that if there is a blood sugar and or an insulin response, a diet soda is not going to be the main culprit of that blood sugar and insulin volatility that you may be experiencing. Those are much more likely to be caused by the actual food choices, the meal timing, meal frequency, fasting or lack thereof, to where maybe it's could be causing something like, let's say, 1% of your blood sugar or insulin responses, but let's definitely be more concerned with the 99%. So I really like
house fire.
Paper cut in a house fire, like you said. I really like that, and just looking to like be realistic and be honest with yourself. Do you think it's contributing to any other food related or fasting related decisions or consistency or lack thereof? Because that's definitely going to be the big needle mover in this equation.
Yep. Love it. All right. So Catherine, Jennifer, Amelia, Susan, and John, thank you so much.
Thank you
for submitting your questions. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for being a part of the Fasting for Life community. Hopefully these things resonated with almost all of us, right? As we started the whole I went to food in a frustrated state. That's never happened to any of us. Only happened to me this weekend. So we are on this journey with you. Appreciate you guys listening. Appreciate the question submission. Tommy, as always, man, I appreciate the conversation, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Bye. So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life. While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.